Are we live? This looks a little dark. Is it dark in here? I don't know. Yeah, I may have to go. Ooh. That's better. That does seems a little dim. Well, I'm a little dim some days. It's a little dark in here. There we are. Good enough. Well, it'll be mood lighting. We'll just go with that. I can see me. Can you see me? I can totally see me. Here, what am I doing? I'm getting a piece of cheese. I have cheese. I have crackers. I have many things. Hi! New bonnet, new bonnet. And why do I have such a lovely, lovely new bonnet? Look, it's so blue bonnet. Blue bonnet. That's margarine, isn't it? Blue bonnet. Well, hi, it's Alison. It's 1:30, and I'm in the living room again. And we have things. God, I'm like, probably finish this thing. So, you know what? The store. Should I even tell you? Yeah, I just put bonnets up. Okay, there's not like a million. There's like 25, but I did. There's bonnets available at the store. So, yes, you can all go mad. Did you see the New York Times? Oh, my God. Bonnet hats, man. We're in the New York Times. Oh, here's my tin cup. I'm trying out the tin cup with hot liquid. We're going to see if this works. We're going to see. It's a super industrial tin cup. If it works with hot liquid. I'll tell you one thing. It keeps liquid really hot. You put a hot drink in here, it's boiling. We're in the New York Times. Sky wrote a whole thing in the New York Times to put it up on Facebook about how much Little House on the Prairie, the show, is like so comforting and how much he likes watching it. And in it was like, I'm a bonnet hat. And yes, Alison Arngrim's on Facebook. So, it's happening. So, I just saw a bunch of our gang today because we're getting ready to do a whole thing with my friend Pamela Bob and her show Living on a Prairie. And there's going to be interviews with the cast of Little House and like a little reunion thing with the benefit for the Actors Fund. It was amazing. And so we had a little tiny little Zoom call. And I saw Karen Grassley. I feel like Romper, and I saw Karen Grassley, and I saw Pam Rylance, and I saw Hersha Parody, and I saw Dean Butler, I saw Hersha and Pam and Dean, and David, oh my God, David, and Wendy was, it was amazing. Everybody was on this call. It was cuckoo crazy. So there you are. The third day. So Pa went to town on an ill-advised trip for tobacco. Now, he was going to get something else for Mom and the kids. But he said, I got to get tobacco and I got to go in town here in the news. And Mom's like, I don't think it's a good idea because they just said, yes, parents who went to the store and didn't come home in time and there's a blizzard and the children froze to death. So, of course, they were terrified. And now he hasn't come up. He's completely overdue. And they said, blizzard came up, he stayed in town. But they have no idea, really. And they're bringing in the wood, and Ma and the girls are just having a horrible, horrible time. But they've been playing games. They play games to keep them going completely mad. And now it is the third day, it says. All night, the house shook and jarred in the wind. Next day, the storm was worse than ever. Well, it's been terrible for like 20 pages, so I don't know. The noises of the wind were more terrible, and snow struck the windows with an icy rattle. Ma made ready to go to the stable. Eat your breakfast, girls, and be careful with the fire, she said. Then she was gone into the storm. Now, she's been going out to that stable, and she had to, Pa ran that cord, the rope from the house to the stable, and she's been having, because she can't see anything, it's like snowblind. She's having to clutch the rope. Terrible, terrible, terrible. After a long time, she came back, and another day began. It was a dark, long day. They huddled close to the stove, and the coal pressed against their backs. Carrie was fretful, and Ma's smile was tired. Laura and Mary studied hard, but they did not know their lessons very well. The hands of the clock moved so slowly that they seemed not to move at all. At last, the gray light faded away, and night was there again. The lamplight shone on the board walls and the white frosted windows. If Pa had been there, he would have played the fiddle, and they would have all been cozy and happy. Come, Ma said. We mustn't sit like this. Would you like to play cat's cradle? Well, they did just play Pussy in the Corner earlier. They really did. And what was it? You had to run to your corner, and then Carrie It was like Carrie ran to the wrong corners, but she tried. Wiggins. Ralph Wiggins. Cat's cradle. Jack, even the dog's depressed. Jack had left his supper untouched. He sighed mournfully in his corner. Mary and Laura looked at each other, and then Laura said, "No, thank you, Ma. We want to go to bed." She cuddled her back tight against Mary's back in the icy cold bed. The storm was shaking the house. It creaked and shuddered all over. Rattling snow scoured the roof. Laura's head was tucked well under the covers, but the sounds in the storm were worse than the wolves. Cold tears ran down her cheeks. That is literally an entire chapter. Do you know that? That's like a whole chapter. She did this thing where they say it was really long, and then suddenly the third day is just like 4 pages of awfulness. You know, it hailed in New York a few minutes ago. Why do I know this? Ha! Because our Zoom call with Pamela Bob, who's in New York, and she's like, I don't my internet, I don't know what's, and apparently there was a giant hailstorm. The sky went black. They says, it's getting dark, and the sky went black, and there was a giant hailstorm, and everyone in New York lost their internet. No, it's not the end of the world. Murder hornets! Murder hornets. The 4th day. Seriously, that's what it says. In the morning, those sounds were gone from the wind. It was blowing with a steady wailing scream, and the house stood still. But the roaring fire in the stove gave hardly any heat. The cold is worse, Ma said. Don't try to do the housework properly. Wrap up in your shawls and keep Carrie with you close to the stove. Soon after Ma came back from the stable, the frost on the eastern window glowed faintly yellow. Laura ran to breathe on it and scratch away the ice until she made a peephole. Outdoors, the sun was shining. Yeah, they made art with little thimbles. They heated thimbles on the frost to make little circles. And using the circles, they made drawings. Except for Carrie, who just made circles. Poor child. I have a little peephole. Sun shining. Ma looked out. Then Mary and Laura took turns looking out at the snow blowing in waves over the ground. The sky looked like ice. Even the air looked cold above the fast-blowing flood of snow, and the sunshine that came through the peephole was no warmer than a shadow. Sideways from the peephole, Laura glimpsed something dark. A furry, big animal was walking deep in the blowing snow. Oh, no. A bear, she thought. It shambled behind the corner of the house and darkened the front window. Okay, they haven't seen any bears in Walnut Grove, Minnesota, I don't think. Also, it's the dead of winter, so, like, hibernating? Oh. I don't think it's a bear. Oh, no. Ma, she cried. I'll bet. But who knows with these people's luck. The door opened. The snowy, furry animal came in. Pa's eyes looked out of its face. Pa's voice said, have you been good girls while I was gone? Ma ran to him. Laura and Mary and Carrie ran, crying and laughing. Ma helped him out of his coat. The fur was full of snow that showered on the floor. Pa let the coat drop too. Charles, you're frozen, Ma said. Just about, said Pa, and I'm hungry as a wolf. Let me sit down by the fire, Caroline, and feed me. Feed me! Feed me, Seymour. His face was thin and his eyes large. He sat shivering close to the oven and said he was only cold, not frostbitten. Ma quickly warmed some of the bean broth and gave it to him. That's good, he said. That warms a fellow. Ma pulled off his boots and he put his feet up to the heat from the oven. Charles, Ma asked, were you? She stood smiling with her mouth trembling. Now, Caroline, don't you ever worry about me, said Pa. I'm bound to come home to take care of you and the girls. He lifted Carrie to his knee and put an arm around Laura and the other around Mary. What did you think, Mary? I thought you would come, Mary answered. That's the girl. And you, Laura? I didn't think you were with Mr. Fitch telling stories, said Laura. I kept wishing hard. There you are, Caroline. How could a fellow fail to get home? Pa asked Ma, give me some more of that broth, and I'll tell you all about it. They waited while he rested and ate bean broth with bread and drank hot tea. Hot tea? This is tea. I made tea earlier. I got milk. It's tea. It's Irish breakfast with some milk in it and honey and milk and tea. And this is in the Sanctuary Traders tin cup, the one that they say, yes, you can actually put hot liquids in. Oh, it's good too. Caffeine! Heavens. His hair and his beard were wet with snow melting in them. Ma dried them with a towel. He took her hand and drew her down beside him and asked, Caroline, do you know what this weather means? It means we'll have a bumper crop of wheat next year. Okay, he always says this. Always. That never happens. Poor Charles. Does it, Charles? Said Mom. Again, she's starting to get a little suspicious. We won't have any grasshoppers next summer. They say in town that grasshoppers come only when the summers are hot and dry and the winters are mild. We're getting so much snow now that we're bound to have fine crops next year. That's good, Charles, Ma said quietly. She's like, are you kidding me? Well, they were talking about all this in the store, but I knew I ought to start home. Just as I was leaving, Fitch showed me the buffalo coat. He got it cheap from a man who went east on the last train running and had to have money to buy his ticket. Fitch said, I could have the coat for $10. $10 is a lot of money, but I'm glad you got the coat, Charles, said Ma. As it turned out, it's lucky I did, though I didn't know it then. Now, he talked about a guy getting the last train running, so a lot of people were getting out of town. Now, they haven't gotten out of town. I mean, they had the locust plague disaster relief party for Christmas. Oh. But a lot of people packed up and left because after the locust thing, there's no crops. And we'll get to that. That's the old expression. We still use it. Got that last train running out of town. So people were just like, I'm getting out of here. Mm-hmm. There you go. Last train running. Mm-mm. Right? So Pa spent, if boots are $3 and coat's $10, that's a lot of money. But he said, nope, bought it. As it turned out, it's lucky I did, though I didn't know it then. But going to town, the wind went right through me. It was cold enough to freeze the nose off a brass monkey. The nose off a brass, I sneezed. Oh my God. The nose off a brass monkey. Now, in this century, and in the big city in Los Angeles, I have heard people talk about freezing something off of a brass monkey, and it wasn't its nose. So this is the 1800s polite version of that expression, freeze nose off a brass monkey. And it seemed like my old coat didn't even strain that wind. So when Fitch told me to pay him when I sell my trap furs next spring, I put that buffalo coat on over my old one. Oh, credit again. When I sell the furs next spring from the animals that I haven't even caught yet, that may not even exist. Charles, heavens. Well, as soon as I was out on the prairie, I saw the cloud in the northwest, but it was so small and far away, I thought I could beat it home. Pretty soon I began to run, but I was no more than halfway when the storm struck me. I couldn't see my hand before my face. It would be all right if these blizzard winds didn't come from all directions at once. I didn't know how they do it. I don't know how they do it. When a storm comes from the northwest, a man ought to be able to go straight north by keeping the wind on his left cheek. But a fellow can't do anything like that in a blizzard. Still, it seemed I ought to be able to walk straight ahead, even if I couldn't see or tell directions. So I kept on walking straight ahead, I thought, till I knew I was lost. I had come a good 2 miles without getting to the creek, and I had no idea which way to turn. The only thing to do was keep on going. I had to walk till the storm quit. If I stopped, I'd freeze. Okay, so he went, even though Ma said, don't do it. And then, of course, a blizzard came, and then he spent $8 bazillion that he didn't have on credit on a coat. And then he started walking back, and of course it hit. And then he got lost in the snow. So this is no wonder. It's amazing he ever got home. So it's typical Charles. Oh, I got in trouble again. So I set myself to outwalk the storm. No, I walked and walked. I could not see any more than if I had been stone blind. I could hear nothing but the wind. I kept on walking in that white blur. I don't know if you noticed, there seemed to be voices howling and things screaming overhead in a blizzard. Okay, how many times did Laura say that? She's like, and the screaming in the storm. And in there, he heard the voices too. Either that, or they've all gone quite crazy and are hearing voices in the wind, which is possible because they're on the prairie and they've gone mad. Yes, Pa, I heard them, Laura said. So did I, said Mary, and Ma nodded. And balls of fire, said Laura. Balls of fire, Pa said. That will keep, Laura, said Ma. Go on, Charles. What did you do? Shh, kids, don't tell them about how we almost burnt down the house. We'll leave the burning of the house down part. Just out. We'll tell him later. After he's had more tea. I kept on walking, Pa answered. I walked till the white blur turned gray and then black, and I knew it was night. I figured I had been walking 4 hours, and these blizzards last 3 days and nights, but I kept on walking. Pa stopped, and Ma said, I had the lamp burning in the window for you. I didn't see it, said Pa. I kept straining my eyes to see something, but all I saw was the dark. Then of a sudden, he doesn't say all of a sudden, or suddenly. He says, then of a sudden, which I guess is a older expression. A lot of weird stuff like that here. Everything gave way under me, and I went straight down. Must have been 10 feet, seemed further. I had no idea what had happened or where I was, but I was out of the wind. The blizzard was yelling and shrieking overhead, but the air was fairly still where I was. I felt around me. There was snow banked up as high as I could reach on 3 sides of me. On the other side was a kind of wall of bare ground sloping back at the bottom. It didn't take me long to figure I'd walked off the bank of some gully somewhere on the prairie. I crawled back under the bank, and there I was with solid ground at my back and overhead, snug as a bear in a den. I didn't believe I would freeze there, out of the wind, with the buffalo coat to keep warmth on my body, so I curled up in it and went to sleep, being pretty tired. Now, my father, that's in the picture back there, that's Thor Arngrim, Thor Hudler, Marvin Arngrimson, yeah. And he grew up on a farm. He totally grew up on the prairie. Mozart, Saskatchewan, which gets insanely cold in the winter. And he did the whole bit. Locusts, tornadoes, hailstorms, blizzards, all of it. And he said, oh yeah, freezing to death. High risk, very dangerous. He said, if you're ever stuck in the snow. Now, mind you, by this time, we were living in California, so I'm like, this is never going to happen. But he said, well, back in the prairie, he learned, if you're in the snow and you think, I'm so sleepy, I'm starting to feel warm, I'll just lie down in the dirt here in this snowbank and I'm feeling warmer. That means you're freezing to death. It means you need to get up immediately and run, because if you're do not sleep in the snow. You just don't. Because he said, no, he knew people, that's how people died every winter. Because they would say, oh, this snowbank feels good. I'm not so cold anymore, and I'm so sleepy. And then they never wake up. So my father told me that. My father was always scaring me, terrorizing me with tales of farm life on the prairie about like which farm animals could eat you. How dangerous everything was. So Pa's taking a sleep in the snow, which is really, really dangerous. Do not try this at home. I mean, he's in a little, like a ravine thing. He's down there, which is probably a little safer, but my, I was glad I had that coat and a good warm cap with ear laps and that extra pair of thick socks, Caroline. How about like maybe a fire? Like he could have built a fire while he was down there. When I woke up, I could hear the blizzard, but faintly. There was solid snow in front of me, coated over with ice where my breath had melted it. The blizzard had filled up the hole I'd made when I fell. There must have been 6 feet of snow over me, but the air was good. I moved my arms and legs and fingers and toes and felt my nose and ears to make sure I was not freezing. I could still hear the storm. So I went to sleep again. No, don't ever do this. He's like, well, I'm down this little ravine and there's no snow, it's dirt. So and now he's like, I'm completely covered in snow. So I went back to sleep. Don't ever do that. This is extremely dangerous. How long has it been, Caroline? Because he has no idea how long he's been gone. 3 days and nights, said Ma. This is the 4th day. Then Pa asked Mary and Laura, do you know what day this is? Is it Sunday? Mary guessed. These girls, they have no idea. as I said, this running thing where she won't say what day it is. They don't know what day it is. Oh, people had calendars in the 18th. They had clocks. They had clocks. They had clocks. They had pocket watches. They had calendars. People knew what day it was. It's not 400 BC. It's the 1870s. People knew what day it was. There were train schedules. There were stagecoach and Pony Express schedules. People knew what day it was. Is it, son? People have no idea what day it is. People, it's kind of like now. People knew what day it was in the 1870s. I don't know what's wrong with these girls. And she's always like, it was December. She won't say December. It was winter. And then suddenly, it's Christmas. And you're like, I thought it was February. It's like, no, she just says winter. And then it's suddenly Christmas. And suddenly it's Sunday. She has no idea what day. Mary doesn't even know what day it is. It's the day before Christmas, said Ma. Oh, so she was just not mentioning that it was Christmas? That it was almost Christmas. And they're freezing to death. She didn't bother to say, by the way, it's almost. How did they not know that it is almost Christmas? How many times? How many times have they not known that it was Christmas? 4? 5? Just in this book? I'm starting to worry about the Ingalls family. I think they need a big wall calendar. I'm concerned. Laura and Mary had forgotten all about Christmas. Please tell me the name of an 8-year-old child who forgets about Christmas. Children who don't remember that Christmas is coming. Not happening. Never gonna happen. They forgot about Christmas. Laura asked, did you sleep all that time, Pa? No, said Pa. I kept on sleeping and waking up hungry and sleeping some more till I woke up just about starved. I was bringing home some oyster crackers for Christmas. So let's see. At this point, he would be dehydrated, starving, malnourished. It's like now like days. It's now past like a little fasting cleanse thing. It's been days, and he hasn't eaten anything. So that's not good. So he's going to start getting faint and have blood sugar crash. And he's been sleeping in the snow, which is pretty much asking to not wake up. And now he's dehydrated. And so he's in real trouble. And then he says, I was bringing home oyster crackers for Christmas. Now, I don't know about you. I like oyster crackers. Chili John's. Have you been to Chili John's? Chili John's in Burbank, California, has the greatest chili, and they have the oyster crackers. In fact, they say that their dad, who ran the place, invented the oyster cracker. They got them. The little tiny white crackers, little hexagonal things, put in your chili. Pa was bringing oyster crackers for Christmas. Now, I said, Chili John's, I love oyster crackers. However, I'm not sure I would consider them a Christmas gift if I just got like, look, a box of oyster crackers for Christmas. I mean, maybe that wouldn't quite cut it. I'd want a little more than that. Now is he drinking the snow? Is he drinking the snow? If he was like scooping up snow and, then he would, but I don't think he did. I don't think he had the sense to even do that. Poor thing. They were in a pocket of the buffalo coat. I took a handful of these crackers out of the paper bag and ate them. I felt out in the snow and took a handful, and I ate that for a drink. Oh, finally, 4 days of no consumption of liquid or water. He finally figured that out. Then all I could do was lie there and wait for the storm to stop. I tell you, Caroline, it was mighty hard to do that. Thinking of you and the girls and knowing you would go out in the blizzard to do the chores, but I knew I could not get home until the blizzard stopped. Okay, he figured that much out. So I waited a long time till I was so hungry again that I ate all the rest of the oyster crackers. They were no bigger than the end of my thumb. Oyster crackers. One of them wasn't half a mouthful, and the whole half pound of them wasn't very filling. He had a half a pound of oyster crackers. They don't weigh very much. That's a lot of oyster crackers. Okay, so he had a big old bag of half a pound of oyster crackers. That's a lot of crackers. A huge bag of oyster crackers and snow. Poor Pa. Then I went on waiting, sleeping some. I guessed it was night again. Whenever I woke, I listened closely and I could hear the dim sound of the blizzard. I could tell by that sound that the snow was getting thicker over me, but the air was still good in my den. The heat of my blood was keeping me from freezing. That's not what keeps you from freezing, because people who have perfectly hot blood, they freeze to death all the time. So I don't know. Here, he's in his little den in his coat, but he's dug out a little thing. So he has a pocket. So in a way, it would, like, make you, so it would sort of trap heat, maybe. Maybe, if you were very lucky. Very lucky. Oyster crackers. Terrible. I tried to sleep all I could, but I was so hungry. I kept waking up. Finally, I was too hungry to sleep at all. Girls, I was bound and determined. I would not do it. But after some time I did. I took out the paper bag out of my inside pocket of my old overcoat, and I ate every bit of the Christmas candy. I'm sorry. I might have gone for the Christmas candy first, you know, little energy, maybe run home in the blizzard, I don't know. Laura hugged him from one side and Mary hugged him from the other. They hugged him hard and Laura said, "Oh, Pa, I am so glad you did." "So am I, Pa, so am I," said Mary. They were truly glad that he didn't starve to death and freeze to death. Better that he should eat the candy. "Well," Pa said, "we'll have a big wheat crop next year, and you girls won't have to wait till next Christmas for candy." Again, with this wheat crop story. Pa. All right. "Was it good, Pa?" Laura asked. Did you feel better after you ate it?" "Good candy that I'm not getting?" "Thank you." "It was very good, and I felt much better," said Pa. "I went right to sleep, and I must have slept most of yesterday and last night. Suddenly I sat up wide awake. I could not hear a sound. Now, was I buried so deep in snow that I couldn't hear the blizzard, or had it stopped? I listened hard. It was so still that I could hear the silence. Girls, I began digging on that snow like a badger. I wasn't slow in digging up out of that den. I came scrambling through the top of that snowbank. And where do you suppose I was? I was on the banks of Plum Creek, just above the place where we set the fish traps, Laura." "Why, I can see the place from the window," said Laura. "Yes, and I could see this house. All that long, terrible time he had been so near. The lamp in the window had not been able to shine into the blizzard of all, or he would have seen its light." Okay, he just spent, I'm really worried about this guy. He just spent 4 days in a hole in the ground, eating oyster crackers and almost dying, and he was like 20 yards from the house. Poor Pa. "My legs were so stiff and cramped, I could hardly stand on them because you've been rolled up in a ball in a snowbank for 4 days." Said Pa, "But I saw this house, and I started for home just fast as I could go, and here I am," he finished, hugging Laura and Mary. Then he went to the big buffalo coat, and he took out one of its pockets, a flat, square-edged can of bright tin. He asked, "What do you think I brought you for Christmas dinner?" They could not guess. "Oysters," said Pa. "Nice fresh oysters. They were frozen solid when I got them, and they're frozen solid yet. Better put them in the lean-to, Caroline, so they'll stay that way till tomorrow." Laura touched the can. It was cold as ice. Okay, they're not fresh. I brought you fresh oysters. They're canned. They're in a can, and they're fresh. That is in the definition of not fresh, Charles. They're in a tin, and they're frozen. But he's like, fresh oysters? Well, I guess if you're in Minnesota, access to oysters, that's probably as good as it's going to get. "I ate up the oyster crackers, and I ate up the Christmas candy, but by jinx," said Pa, "I brought the oysters home." Probably only because he didn't have a can opener. And they would have been How disgusting would it be if you had to eat frozen canned oysters? That would be kind of gross. Okay. Well, I'm going to finish this. Should we do it? Should we totally finish this? I need a piece of cheese, I don't know. So, there is, apparently, shockingly, only, one more chapter to this entire book. And it's a short one. And it is called Christmas Eve. Because, I guess, since finally someone remembered what month it was that Christmas, and Pa brought home a frozen can of oysters, they are now going to attempt to have Christmas, such as it is. Ooh, that was great. All right, here we go. Last chapter, 41. Christmas Eve. Pa went early to do the chores that evening, and Jack went with him, staying close to his heels. Jack did not intend to lose sight of Pa again. They came in cold and snowy. Pa stamped the snow from his feet and hung his old coat with the cap on the nail by the lean-to door. "The wind is rising again," he said. "We will have another blizzard before morning. Hey, maybe you want to go to the store again." Aye. "Just so you were here, Charles. I don't care how much it storms," said Ma. Jack lay down contentedly, and Pa sat, warming his hands by the stove. Uh-oh, they're singing. "Laura," he said, "if you'll bring me the fiddle box, I'll play you a tune." Laura brought the fiddle box to him. Pa tuned the fiddle and rosined the bow, and then while Ma cooked supper, he filled the house with music. Oh, I've heard of this one. "Oh, Charlie, he's a fine young man. Oh, Charlie, he's a dandy. Charlie likes to kiss the girls, and he can do it handy. I don't want none of your weevily wheat. I don't want none of your barley. I want fine flour in half an hour to bake a cake for Charlie." Okay, I don't know. This kind of sounds like some kind of, like, drinking song. Like it might be risque about Charlie and the girls. I don't know. Pa's voice rollicked with a rollicking tune, and Carrie laughed and clapped her hands, and Laura's feet were dancing. Then the fiddle changed the tune, and Pa began to sing about sweet Lily Dale. Who is Lily Dale? I do not know Lily Dale. I bet you Sarah or somebody knows Lily Dale. "'Twas a calm, still night, and the moon's pale light shone soft over hill and dale." Pa glanced at Mary, busy at the stove, while Mary and Laura sat listening, and the fiddle slipped into frolicking up and down with his voice. "Mary, put the dishes on, the dishes on, the dishes on. Mary, put the dishes on, we'll all take tea." "And what shall I do, Pa?" Laura cried, while Mary ran to get the plates and cups from the cupboard. The fiddle and Pa kept singing down all the steps they'd just gone up. "Lord, take them off again, off again, off again. Lord, clear the tables when we've all gone away." So Laura knew that Mary was to set the table for supper, and she was to clear afterward. Now, I heard this song, nursery rhyme, when I was very young, and it was, "Polly put the kettle on. Polly put the kettle on, kettle on, kettle on. Polly put the kettle on, we'll all have tea. And then, Suki, take it off again. They've all gone away." Suki? But that's the one I read when I was like, yay big. "Suki, take it off again, off again. Suki, take it off, we'll all gone away." Suki and Polly, Mary, Laura, dishes, kettles, whatever. Okay, so the wind was screaming again, fiercer and louder outside. Snow whirled swishing against the windows, but Pa's fiddle sang in the warm lamp-lighted house. The dishes made small clinking sounds as Mary set the table. Carrie rocked herself in the rocking chair, and Ma went gently between the table and the stove. In the middle of the table, she set a milk pan full of beautiful brown baked beans. And now, from the oven, she took the square baking pan full of golden cornbread. Ooh, remember when I made cornbread? I gotta make more cornbread. Cornbread and beans. The rich brown smell and the sweet golden smell curled deliciously together in the air. Pa's fiddle laughed and sang. Now, this gets weird. "I'm Captain Jinks of the Horse Marines. I feed my horse on corn and beans, and though 'tis far beyond my means, from Captain Jinks of the Horse Marines, I'm captain of the army." Pa's gone nuts. This is like this, what? Laura patted Jack's furry, smooth forehead and scratched his ears for him, and then with both hands she gave his head a quick, happy squeeze. Everything was so good. Grasshoppers were gone, and next year Pa could harvest the wheat. Tomorrow was Christmas, with oyster stew for dinner. Ooh. There would be no presents and no candy, but Laura could not think of anything she wanted, and she was so glad that Christmas candy had helped to bring Pa safe home again. "Supper is ready," Ma said in her gentle voice. Pa laid the fiddle in its box. He stood up and looked around at them all. His blue eyes shone at them. "Look, Caroline," he said, "how Laura's eyes are shining." And we just got all the way through on the banks of Plum Creek. Now, I gotta try to keep count. How many Christmases did they have? Because they did Little House in the Big Woods. I think there was a Christmas. There was definitely a couple of Christmas. The Christmas Mr. Edwards, Little House in the Prairie in Kansas. they were only in Walnut Grove for like 2 years. And Laura was like 7 or 8 at the beginning of this. And then I lost count of how many times we had Christmas. And she's like, still 8. I'm completely confused. But they said, yeah, we need to go through this and count all the Christmases. Because this is just great. How many okay, here's Christmas again. The Christmas horses. And then there was the Christmas, so it's at least like 3 right there. There's 3 right there. There was, because there was the church thing. And then was the horses, and then there was this. That's 3 Christmases, boom, right there. And I think there might have been 4. So she's not still 8. It's like 12. What's happening? What is happening in this book? So this one is done, which is good. Because although I love this one, because it's the one the show is based on, most of the show is based on, oh, we're in Walnut Grove, and we're in the town, and there's a church, and a Reverend Alden, and a Miss Beadley. That's what we'll do the TV show with. And Nellie, duh, is in here. But reading it, man, is this thing confusing. Now, the next one is tomorrow, which is Tuesday, tomorrow, in case you're like Mary and don't know what day it is anymore. Tuesday is By the Shores of Silver Lake. We have a Silver Lake. Anyone here in California? We have a Silver Lake in Los Angeles. Silver Lake is a part of LA town here in California. It's lovely. So By the Shores of Silver Lake. And, yep, that's the next one. And you know it's the next one because literally they're still at the house. She's still at Plum Creek. And a unexpected visitor arrives. So, yes, they're still in Plum Creek. This is how they get out of Plum Creek. And it's By the Shores of Silver Lake. And we will start it tomorrow. There are bonnets on the Square store. If you go to the Square store, you can buy bonnets. And then Saturday, I'm doing the show again. 8 o'clock California time, 11 o'clock New York time. But yes, stageit.com. And again, it's the Alison Arngrim Confessions of a Prairie Terror. And it'll kind of be the same thing. I'll have some new questions. I'll probably get some more questions. And it will be fabulous. And the New York Times, people are talking about being bonnet heads and talking about us all hanging out here reading the books. And it's just awesome. It's awesome. So, get your bonnets on, get ready for tomorrow, Shores of Silver Lake, and take care, and, I don't know, go eat some cornbread. And wash your hands, and, oh yeah, the cat's fine. She's just mad at me for making it go to the vet. And I'll see you tomorrow.